Welcome to lecture number 31. Lecture number 31 में we discuss some special industries like banks, oil and gas. हम देखेंगे कि उनमें what's the best way to do the financial statement analysis, what sort of ratios are used. Then we will particularly look at the balance sheet and the income statement. For example, we'll see के जो बैंक्स की इनकम स्टेटमेंट होती है या बैलेंस शीट होती है उसमें व्हाट इज द मेन डिफरेंस और मेन कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स with respect to the normal balance sheet and income statement. So now we will start with the banks. Banking system usually involves two types of structures. एक तो आपके इंडिविजुअल बैंक्स होते हैं and then you have bank holding companies. बैंक होल्डिंग कंपनीज कंसिस्ट ऑफ अ पेरेंट दैट ओन्स वन और मैनी बैंक्स। तो इसमें एक तो आपके सिंगल एंटिटी बैंक्स होते हैं और फिर आपके चंद एक ऐसी कंपनीज होती हैं विच ओन टू और मोर देन टू बैंक्स। In addition, the holding company may own bank-related financial services and non-financial subsidiaries. In financial report analysis, we must determine the extent of the business generated by banking services. In order for the specific industry ratios to be meaningful, a large proportion of the services should be bank related. Now, why this statement is important? Uski wajah hai ki let's say if we are trying to figure out the income performance of any bank related company, तो उसमें हमें ये जरूर देखना पड़ता है कि what sort of activities is that company involved in. क्या उसकी बैंकिंग के अलावा कुछ और भी नॉन फाइनेंशियल सर्विसेज हैं which cannot be in any way linked to the bank process, but obviously you will try not to use those figures when you're doing the ratio analysis. Balance sheet. The balance sheet of a commercial bank is sometimes termed the report of condition. So जो commercial bank की balance sheet होती है, इसका जो दूसरा नाम है, that is report of condition. Two significant differences exist between the traditional balance sheet and that of a bank. The accounts of banks may seem the opposite of those of other types of firms. When we talk about other types of firms, तो हमें उसमें आपका पता है आपके जो assets होते हैं वो आपके debit side पे आते हैं. For example, if there is an increase in assets, so what you will do, you will debit the asset, and if there is a decrease in asset, then you will credit it. First, the accounts of banks may seem the opposite of those of other types of firms. Checking accounts or demand deposits are liabilities to a bank, since it owes the customers money in these cases. Similarly, loans to customers are assets receivables. अब होता है कि if you run a business और आप बैंक से लोन लेते हैं, so उस लोन को you will treat as a liability. लेकिन जो बैंक है, बैंक उसको as an asset show करेगा. Furthermore, the balance sheet accounts are not subdivided into current and non-current accounts. Some banks provide a very detailed disclosure of their assets and liabilities. Other banks provide only journal disclosure. The quality of review that can be performed can be no better than the disclosure. So it means कि जो बैंक जितना ज्यादा अपनी assets और liabilities को disclose करेगा, उस बैंक का उतना detailed and accurate financial statement analysis हो सकता है. If the data that you have is of very limited nature, whatever ratios you come up with will not hold, a lot of weightage. Representative assets of a bank may include cash on hand or due from other banks, investments, securities, loans, bank premises, and equipment. Closely review the disclosure of a bank's assets. Now, review the stockholders' equity section of the balance sheet to determine whether significant accumulated other comprehensive income or loss exists or not. Review the disclosure of non-performing asset. Now, what is a non-performing asset? In general, a non-performing asset is that asset for which the bank is not receiving income or is receiving reduced income. The categories of non-performing assets are non-accrual loans, renegotiated loans, and other real estate. Now, what is non-accrual loans? Non-accrual loans वो loans होते हैं for which payments have fallen significantly behind, so that the bank has stopped accruing interest income on these loans. अगर आपको किसी ने इंटरेस्ट पे करना है और वो बेसिकली is unable to pay, तो होगा क्या कि the bank should stop accruing interest income on those loans. Bank should stop recording income against it, क्योंकि because you're not receiving any income against it. Renegotiated loans are loans that the bank has renegotiated with the customer because the customer has had trouble meeting the terms of the original loan. In addition to other factors, banks should consider re-negotiate loans when they adjust the loan loss reserves. Other real estate usually consists of real estate the bank has taken when it foreclosed on a loan. Foreclosed on a loan means कि आपका किसी को आपने एक मॉर्गेज की भी थी लोन, तो उसने उस कंपनी ने ऑब्वियसली इफ द कंपनी हैज मॉर्गेज्ड इट्स एसेट अगेंस्ट अ लोन और वो उस लोन पे डिफॉल्ट कर जाती है, तो ऑब्वियसली वो जो एसेट है वो बैंक की प्रॉपर्टी बन जाता है. Why? Because it has foreclosed on the loan. For example, the bank may have made a loan to a company for a hotel and accepted a mortgage on the hotel as collateral. If the bank must foreclose on the loan, it may take possession of the hotel. The bank would want to sell the hotel, but it may be necessary to hold and operate for a relatively long period of time before a buyer can be found. तो आपके बैंक स्टेटमेंट बैलेंस शीट पे बहुत सी ऐसा रियल स्टेट आ सकता है जो बैंक ने एज कोलैटरल कस्टमर से लिया था, एंड विच सिंस द कस्टमर हैज डिफॉल्टेड तो बैंक की वो प्रॉपर्टी बन जाती है. The amount or trend of non-performing assets should be observed closely. This can be an early indication of trouble to come. For example, a significant increase in non-performing assets uh, late in the year may have had an insignificant effect on the past year's profits, but it could indicate a significant negative influence on the future year's profits. Acha, what about the income statement? A bank's principal revenue source is usually interest income from loans and investment securities. The difference between interest income and interest expense is termed net interest income or net interest margin. Now, what is interest income and interest expense? Interest income is the income that the bank is getting. बैंक से अगर आपने लोन लिया है और जो उस लोन पे आप बैंक को इंटरेस्ट पे करते हैं, so that will be considered as income interest. Interest income with respect to the bank. और बैंक जिनको लोन देता है इंटरेस्ट एक्सपेंस जिनसे लोन लेके, so that is called the interest expense. The net interest margin is important to a bank's profitability. Usually, falling interest rates are positive for a bank's interest margin because the bank will be able to reduce the interest rate that it pays for deposits before the average rate of return earned on loan. बैंक इनकम स्टेटमेंट्स इंक्लूड अ सेपरेट सेक्शन फॉर अदर इनकम जो आपकी नॉन इंटरेस्ट इनकम है. टिपिकल अदर इनकम इंक्लूड्स ट्रस्ट डिपार्टमेंट फीस, सर्विस चार्जेस, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. So basically this is the basic and generic format for a bank based income statement. The importance of other income has substantially increased for banks obviously क्योंकि service charges आपकी बहुत becomes a very big chunk of the income that you generate. Acha, ratios for banks. Because of these vastly different accounts and statement formats, few of the traditional ratios are appropriate for banks. Exceptions include return on assets, return on equity, and most of investment related ratios. Banks related important ratios are: one is earnings assets to total assets. Earnings assets includes loans, leases, investment securities, and money market assets. It excludes cash and non-earning deposits plus fixed assets. So one is the earnings assets to total assets ratio. Then you have interest margin to average earnings assets. This is a key determinant of bank profitability, for it provides an indication of management's ability to control the spread between interest income and interest एक्सपेंस। इंटरेस्ट इनकम वो इनकम है जो इन फॉर्म ऑफ इंटरेस्ट आपको मिल रहा है, और इंटरेस्ट एक्सपेंस इज दैट एक्सपेंस दैट यू आर पेइंग एज इंटरेस्ट। लोन loss coverage ratio. The loan loss coverage ratio computed by dividing pre-tax income plus provision for loan losses by net charge offs has determined the asset quality and the level of protection of loans. Then you have equity capital to total assets. Then you have deposits times capital. The ratio of deposits times capital concerns both depositors and stockholders. To some extent, it is a type of debt equity ratio indicating a bank's debt position. More capital implies a greater margin of safety, while a larger deposit base gives a prospect of higher return to stockholders since more money is available for investment purposes. Then you have loan to deposit. The second industry that we will look at is oil and gas. Oil and gas companies' financial statements are affected significantly by the method they choose to account for costs associated with exploration and production. The method chosen is some variation of the successful efforts or full costing methods. Acha, ab aapka, when we talk about oil and gas, so we use two costing methods. One is the successful effort and the other one is called full costing method. A gas company uses a variation of two costing methods to account for exploration and production costs. One is the successful efforts. The successful efforts method places only exploration and production costs of successful wells on the balance sheet under PPE. So successful efforts method में क्या होता है? You know, when you're trying to explore for oil and gas, तो बहुत से ऐसे well जो इनको आप एक्सप्लोर करते हैं उसमें आपको पता लगता है कि दे आर ड्राई इन नेचर. सो सक्सेसफुल एफर्ट मेथड्स में यू ओनली put those wells under your PPE जिनमें आपको पता है कि it has been successful and you have been able to find oil or gas in it. Exploration and production costs of unsuccessful or dry wells are expensed when it is determined that there is a dry hole. So जो आपके सक्सेसफुल वेल्स होते हैं उनको ट्रीट किया जाता है पीपीई में बैलेंस शीट के ऊपर, और जो आपके अनसक्सेसफुल या ड्राई होते हैं उनको सिंपली व्हाट यू डू, आप उनको एक्सपेंस के तौर पे इनकम स्टेटमेंट में शो करते हैं. With the full costing method, exploration and production cost of all the wells, successful and unsuccessful, are placed on the balance sheet under PPE. Under both methods, exploration and production costs placed on balance sheet are subsequently amortized as expense to the net income statement. Amortization costs that relate to natural resources. We know the natural resources की depreciation का concept है, that is called depletion expense. The costing method used for exploration and production can have a very significant influence on the balance sheet and the income statement. Under both methods, exploration and production costs are eventually expensed, but a significant difference exists in the टाइमिंग ऑफ एक्शन. तो ऑब्वियसली आपको पता है जो पीपीई भी है उनको भी ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम यू डू कन्वर्ट इनटू एक्सपेंस, बट टाइमिंग डिफरेंट है. चंद एक में यू इमीडिएटली टेक द अनसक्सेसफुल वंस as an expense, or the second scenario may you treat it as PPE and then over a period of time you turn it into expense. In theory, the successful efforts method takes the position that a direct relationship exists between costs incurred and specific reserves discovered. These costs should be placed on the balance sheet. Costs associated with unsuccessful efforts are a period expense and should be charged to expense. In theory, the full costing method takes the position that the drilling of all wells, successful or unsuccessful, is part of the process of finding successful wells. Therefore, all of the costs should be placed on the balance sheet. So this is the end of lecture number 31.